Great. All righty. We are live on the policy subcommittee meeting, and for the review and revision of a variety of different policies. I think the first one we have is purchasing cards and credit cards. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this is a brand new regulation. We had some language that existed before in the policy for DJF and a little bit in the regulation for DJFR. But MSBA recommended a kind of standalone policy around purchasing cards and credit cards just to get a little bit more specificity there about what is and is not allowable and how those will be used. So we use the MSBA regulation as pretty well a template, and then just we added a couple pieces that have been sticky pieces for the district in the past. For example, people trying to buy gift cards with district purchasing cards and some of those types of things. So we added that in. But for the most part, we really kept the MSBA policy, MSBA regulation.
All righty. I just had a couple questions, and it wasn't on the policy. It was just some of the terms that were used.
Yeah.
Who is our accounting manager, and then who is our district manager of purchasing? Or the
So Tammy Notice, so Tammy Notice is our director of purchasing, and then John Cressman is our manager of accounting.
Okay.
And then before John in that position, it was Rhonda Wood, and then before Tammy, it was Dan Van Dyne.
All right.
We also thought it was helpful to include the things that are not allowed in the regulation, because that's the thing that we have come up the most often is when people go to buy something and it's, well, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to buy it, but now having the regulation to be able to refer back to, we think will be helpful for staff and add some clarity.
I was curious, why anything on Amazon?
So that's because we run into some issues with that, twofold. One, the district has a business account with Amazon, so we have different pricing than what you would if you were going on as an individual purchaser. So you have a lot of people who think they're getting a good deal, but the district actually can save more if we buy it through Amazon. Then the other challenge is we've had two things happen. One, people have saved the district credit card and then they've bought other things on Amazon that they meant to buy for themselves. And then instead they've charged the district credit card or district purchase card. So that's happened. Then the other challenge is with shipping. We really have to verify that the items that were ordered showed up. Amazon has a very narrow return window. And so we need those items to show up through the distribution center whenever possible. So that way, if it shows up damaged, that we can quickly get the return process going and not have the clock run out and not be able to return the item.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next one on the list is DBB.
And this was just a 5-year review. Really no big change on this one.
I didn't see anything on that.
Just some capitalization.
Now, DIB.
Mm-hmm. This again was a 5-year review. It pretty well replicates what's in Missouri Revised Statute. So the reason we did a review of it, because there were some updates to statute in the area, but it doesn't change anything that we have written in our policy. So the policy itself can stay. Just wanted to have it aligned to the most recent version of Missouri Revised Statute.
All righty. Anybody else have anything? No. Next, artificial intelligence use. This is a brand new policy.
It's a brand new policy and a brand new regulation. The district has had a committee that's been working on this. So Alan Wheat, Director of Student Services, has been the one sharing the work of the committee. And that committee has included people in a number of different functional areas in the district. So folks from assistive technology, we've had some instructional facilitators, administrators. We've also had teacher level voice, the district legal counsel. So Brian Cave had a representative that was a part of the conversation, and technology services. Because this really is an area that's ever evolving and the district's really trying to figure out where do we land here. As we talked about the last board policy meeting, MSBA did provide kind of a shell of a policy. And so what we did here was we took the recommendations from Brian Cave and combined those with the MSBA recommended policy. So the recommended policy really centers on we're going to have a district artificial intelligence plan. That plan is going to get revisited every year because we know the world in this space is going to keep changing. So at least annually, we're going to revisit it to make a new plan for the next year. And so the policy says who's going to be the coordinator, who's basically in charge of making sure that we update the plan and if issues come up along the way. And so since the executive director of student services has been the one kind of chairing the work to this point, we have in the policy that they'd be continuing to be the person serving as coordinator for now of this work. And those are the big pieces of the policy. The regulation gets a little bit more into the weeds, but
Can we go back to the policy?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, are we going to change this to executive director? Because right now it still says chief.
So the title, like this is reflecting what the title will be.
You
Right
got
now,
it.
the title is executive director, but by the time this goes live, it would be chief.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good
The
catch. Thank you, Trevor.
The question that I had was current Gen AI tools are prone to producing hallucinations.
Mhm.
Is hallucinations a term that is used with AI? I've never
It
heard
is.
it used like that. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah. Essentially, what the tool does is in the absence of information, it just makes it up.
Okay.
And so we have a couple examples that we're going to use when we provide documentation to teachers at the start of the year, where if you just gave it a very short prompt that says, write a present level for XYZ student, they're a student with autism and they're doing well, it's going to give you paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of information, and it's all just made up.
Okay. And so that's what when I think of sensory,
Yeah.
listening, auditory, visual,
Yeah.
when I read that, I'm thinking, wow. But
Yeah.
okay, now that makes sense. Okay. All right. And that's the term they use for AI, hallucination.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Fine with me. Hey, you're out of my league on AI. Okay.
Yeah, we did a lot of learning with this one. There's a lot of moving pieces.
I think there's a lot. The more I read about AI, the more moving pieces there seems to be. This is one of the more scary things.
Yeah.
Regulation?
Yep. So the regulation is where we delved a little bit more into what are those things that can be used for, and then what are those absolute prohibitions. And these are ones where we took a little bit of what MSBA had, but then also pulled out some things that Brian Cave had identified as well. In addition to that, the district's AI plan, which the committee that Alan Wheat's been chairing, they've created a do's and don'ts that already got shared out with staff at the end of last school year, so they know what the do's and don'ts are. But that's the challenge with this, is we don't want to give staff a giant book because they're not going to really be able to process all of it. What we really had boiling it down to a one-sheeter of here's what's okay, and here are the things that are outside of the bounds, and making sure they know what are those appropriate uses and what are those uses that as a district we don't want to have happen.
All right. How often do our teachers use AI?
So it varies. We have a number of programs where it's really curricularly appropriate for the students to be using it. Think programs like Cisco networking or web and computer programming. It's just another tool that exists within those fields that students are going to use it for. We also have a lot of places where teachers use it either for brainstorming, or if you're trying to come up with really specific scenario questions, as opposed to spending a bunch of time trying to write your own scenarios, it can really give you a good jumping off point. So it's a good brainstorming tool. So that we see a lot of ways that it can bring some productivity for things that our teachers need to do. At the same time, we don't want to compromise privacy. So it varies on teacher comfort level. But there's also now, and that's what the regulation kind of gets at, is there's a lot of times where people are utilizing AI and they don't necessarily even realize that they're doing it. Where like Google is starting to embed some of that in its search feature, where you're doing a standard search, but its AI tool is also doing a search at the same time and providing you some feedback. And so knowing this is kind of a moving target, we want to prepare our teachers for all the different types of AI tools that they're going to encounter.
Aren't there a variety of different AI lawsuits going on right now? It seems like every time I turn around, there is a suit defining something.
Yeah.
Yes.
District attorneys brought up really our biggest concern with AI tools is intellectual property, that it can spit out content where you don't realize that you're plagiarizing, and we are. And so that's a big concern with the AI tools, is it might go find the thing that you need, and that thing is just verbatim quoting somebody else's text. And then we're not crediting those folks as we're using it. And so that's one of those pitfalls that's led to a number of lawsuits. It's also everything, if you're using one of the free or publicly available tools, anything that you put in there then becomes their property and they can utilize. And so that's where we get into the privacy component of it too. I really want to make sure that we're not doing anything to violate any of the privacy laws that apply to our students or staff.
Right, because if you would use a student's name in your search or like that, would that not be utilized in one of the swaths when they cut through on somebody else using AI? My understanding AI is what it does is it cuts a swath of previous information and regurgitates it back.
Yeah, it's all machine learning. And so that's the concern, is that anything we put in there then can be used again later. And so really making sure we protect student privacy. And so that's both in the policy. We have it listed at the bottom talking about confidentiality and all of the laws that we still have to abide by. But then it's brought up again in the regulation as well. And then in the do's and don'ts that we will be sharing with staff, it's going to be number one on the do's and don'ts, is that we're not putting any of that personally identifiable information into an AI system ever.
Okay. It's a brave new world. This is different.
So kind of order of operations with this is the goal is for us to get the policy and regulation on the books by start of school. So in August, we can be training teachers on this as they're coming in the door. The AI plan, which is the do's and don'ts that came from the committee, that's something else that when this goes for second reading, we're also going to bring that do's and don'ts to the board as well. So you can kind of see the whole package of everything we're providing teachers in the AI space.
Dr. Macklin, on this one, this might be one that might be worthwhile. You know, when we have the superintendent's presentation, our presentation. AI seems to be hot right now, and tons of people are looking at it, and tons of people are looking at what we're doing on it. This might be worthwhile to bring up and to speak.
Okay.
Especially since those are the ones when we start doing that, that information is usually live streamed. And I'd like to have everybody else understand what we're doing with this.
Great. Yeah, we can do that. I think, and again, I think the thought here was really to establish the policy and regulation, then to be able to move forward. But I think that's it. I think that's a great idea.
It's just that I have as many people who like this as are scared to death of this.
Well, and I think someone said it's a brave new world, right? So the unknown and the unchanged, I think, is what causes that scarce and those pieces to go from there. So I think being able to do that, I think is great.
And we also have to be cognizant that our teachers are operating in a dual system in a lot of places, and partner districts are using AI tools as well. So they're getting, we want to make sure that our message aligns with the message they're getting from partner district as well. And so that's also why our policy, there's a couple spots we see acknowledgement of, if the partner district says you can't do it and you work in the partner district, then we defer to the partner district.
Okay. Sounds good to me. All righty. I think after that, we go to the reg on this. Yeah, no discrimination.
Yep, it is the regulation. Just updates. What we were doing on this one is changing the names of who would be the compliance officer or designee. And then, of course, minor grammatical errors, just updating. Everything else was current.
I would recommend one change in the grammatical error here.
Yes.
Grammatical thing. And this is really picky, and I apologize for it.
Pick away.
It's just that I actually had time to read through everything and got way too picky. On page 1, page 4, working days. Days in which the districts, there should be an apostrophe after the T, then an S on business offices. That's
You said
not-
on page 4?
No, page 1, number
Page 1.
4, working, it says working days.
Got it.
Days on which the district's business offices are open. It should be T apostrophe S.
Got it.
And that may be the pickiest thing that I've had today.
I love it. It's changed.
Okay.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And then I also changed a few below. The superintendent was capitalized. I was perusing that as I was going through again.
Other than
Any
that,
other questions?
I had nothing on
Okay.
that. And that's pretty cut and dry, as we had before.
Yep, just updates.
I have to admit, I tried to read this. My eyes wouldn't do this, and I couldn't get my screen to get bigger.
This would be the compulsory part-time attendance. That still has the comments in it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So we'll have to take the comments out. So this was a conversation that Dr. Grigsby and I were having back and
Okay.
forth. So what this is the update. I used MSBA. I also used the practices that the schools are using.
Okay. It was fine with me.
The
I'm sorry.
JFCA. I'm sorry.
I said I was just on the last paragraph, sorry.
On JFCA, since we're actually designating Board of Education as a specific thing, wouldn't we keep the capitals here?
I did not think so.
Okay, I know we have them throughout when we say the board, but I thought if it's a specific title, Board of Education, it would be capitalized. But I'll defer to whoever wants, who wants to do whatever on that.
Well, we'll go back to the style guide and we'll make sure.
Okay,
Yeah, I thought proper names, but. And then the regulation goes JFCAR. The regulation did have a lot of updates, a few more friendlier language as I was going through it. So the big chunk in the red.
Yeah.
Also updated for technical schools. So for students that were wearing boots or protective clothing. Uniforms, etc.
I had a question on 4, and it's just, I was trying to think of anything that might go against this policy, somebody could come up with it. All students must wear shoes, boots, or other types of footwear. What happens if somebody breaks a foot and they have it wrapped? And part of the foot is out. Is that considered footwear?
I think during our investigational purposes, that would come up. So if there was a procedure that we would put into place that you would have to wear a certain type of shoe and you didn't have it for some reason, that would come up in the investigation.
No, I mean, what if an individual has already broken a foot?
Yeah,
They
so for the
couldn't
dress and
sport.
appearance policy component, like that would fall into that other types of footwear category if they're
Okay,
in a
that
walking boot
takes
or
care
if
of
they're
it.
in a cast.
Yeah.
As long
We-
as as
we-
long as that takes care of it, that's fine.
Yeah, the
Sure.
other types
And
of
there's also-
footwear gives that latitude.
I think there's also a piece here, it comes down to judgment, right? So
Yeah.
those pieces of judgment is also very clear, just considering the individual and the dress.
At the same time, if you've been in our schools lately, you'd be surprised the number of students who try to show up barefoot or want to walk
Wow.
around barefoot. You would,
Wow.
Yes.
yeah, it's a
Wow.
thing.
Huh.
Well, grounding is a thing now, right?
Yes, yes.
Then I'm fine with it. Next thing on secret organizations.
Yep. Another just MSBA updates, just reusing the language. It was very similar, but just, I think, more friendlier language.
Could we, whatever we do on that other one on Board of Education for the B and the E, I had this one circled like, whatever you decide is fine with me, just
Do the same.
do
Make
the
sure they
same
match.
thing. Yeah, make sure they match.
Yes, sir. And JFCJ, weapons in schools. Again, updates from MSBA, just making sure they release the information and then minor grammatical errors. It's one that we hadn't updated in a while.
Most of this is by statute, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the policies that's almost statute verbatim, just broken out into a more readable format.
Which brings us to our salary schedule, Mr. Ander.
So this is one, so we've had the policy for a long time. This is one, if you recall, the challenges we had with the salary schedule question around the adult education LPN instructors.
Yeah.
The changes here is looking to try and rectify some of that clarity issue. So in the policy, adding the clarification that a professional staff salary schedule can be used to compensate administrators, certified and not uncertified, professional staff. So it didn't have in there before that you could be certified and not part of a collective bargaining unit and have a salary schedule. So we wanted to add in there that we do have certified staff who are not in a collective bargaining unit and that a salary schedule could be applied to them.
Okay, and we had no adult education instructor salary schedule before.
So if you work through the history, at one point in time we did,
Okay.
and that would go to the board every year.
Uh-huh.
And then around 2021, that stopped. And then the contention was that you couldn't do it because this policy didn't allow for a salary schedule for certified staff. So we were looking to rectify that so that way we could have a clearly defined salary schedule for certified instructional staff working in the adult education program.
Okay.
The first regulation is for the teacher salary schedules, which again, that regulation's been on the books for a while. Only made a couple grammatical errors. There were no big structural changes to this one.
Okay.
And then the new regulation, the R2, is adult education salary schedules. And this, a lot of it mirrors what you saw on the teacher version, but then added some structure to how a salary schedule would work for our adult education instructors.
Okay.
One thing that we thought was necessary to clarify was kind of how initial placement would work for these individuals, but then also kind of the channels. So we have instructor 1, instructor 2, and instructor 3, kind of similar to what you'd see at a post-secondary institution where you have, instructor, assistant professor, professor, and kind of clarifying the difference between the three. And for us, a big part of it is these folks do have to get certified through DESE. So the difference as you're moving across from instructor 1 to instructor 2 to instructor 3, that DESE certification plays a role in addition to your degree attainment.
All right. Okay.
We also needed to clarify because the State Board of Nursing had made some changes. We used to not be able to hire an associate's degree registered nurse to teach in an LPN program. They made a change that's now an option, that you can be a registered nurse with an associate's degree and teach in an LPN program. So we also want to recognize that in this regulation as well. And that was it.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time.
All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
See
as
some
well.
of you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, yes, see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.